Underwriting support for this program is provided by the Eureka Teachers Association's School Board Liaison, Philip Middlemiss. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to reconvene us into open session and ask Board Clerk John Fullerton to report out from closed session.
On items C1 and C2, there's no action to report. On item C3, it was not discussed.
Okay, and tonight, Board Member Wendy Davis will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There are not.
Okay. Then we will move down to information, superintendent's report.
Okay, I have a couple of things I am pleased to report out. Starting with, we received a recognition of 2 of our teachers for their exceptional service and participation in fostering international peace. Those teachers are Ben Henshaw at Eureka High School and Bernie Levy at Zane Middle School. And it's through site-based educational experiences with a collaboration for what's called Consultants for Global Programs. And so it really is to help foster kids learning about diverse populations, other cultures, humanities, and those 2 teachers have been recognized for their work in those areas. I also want to report on our Summer Professional Development Academy. It's going well, and we are into our 2nd week. Eureka City School teachers and administrators and other certificated staff have reported back the excellence of the trainings so far, and we anticipate the rest of the classes will be equally well received. It's going well. Some of our classified staff last week went through a 2-day training for nonviolent crisis intervention. CPI is what it's also commonly referred to. It really is to help participants learn both verbal and nonverbal ways to de-escalate situations on a campus. I should say that we have 2 of our own staff, Kevin Bean, who's a resource teacher at Grant, and Sherry Jensen, principal, who conducted the training, as they are our certificated employees that are certificated trainers for this program. So it's something that we did many years ago as a district, our CPI training. We didn't have it available to our employees in the district for approximately 4 or 5 years. I am pleased to say it is back and that we've already had 20 participants go through it. So that's encouraging. I want to say our summer school program had 42 students attend from the middle school for English and math. We had 126 students attend from the high school. They took English, math, sciences, and history. We also had 20 special day class students attend our summer program. Our Jumpstart program involved both Alice Burney and Lafayette. That's where the incoming kindergartners come in and learn a little bit about what it's like to be kindergarten students. And my understanding is we've had slightly more than 20 students participate at both those sites. We also get some of our CELT testing done and some other things, but it's been very well received. It's Alice Burney's 2nd year, and it's Lafayette's 1st. We hired a new GRIP coordinator, Scott, how do you say his name? Moroff. And this summer, he, as part of his GRIP coordination, took some of our high school students, and they did their first graffiti cleanup day in Eureka. So they went around and painted off graffiti down in 2nd Street, I know for sure. We got some pictures, and that's real exciting to see our students doing some really positive community service. I also wanted to let the board know that our CST scores are in, and all principals have reviewed results. Most schools have shown dramatic increases, and Dr. Lentz will prepare an overview of the CST results for the board at the September meeting. And that's it for superintendent's report.
Okay. We'll move down to board members' reports. Fran?
Self on here. I had intended to go to the orientation at Zane today, but since I'm not driving, I couldn't get a ride. But I did get, just before I came to the board meeting, I got a very excited call from my granddaughter, who is going to be a 7th grader this year, about how wonderful it was and what her schedule was and who her teachers are going to be. And she already knows that one student is going to be in, that she knows in 2 of her classes. So anyway, and that's unusual for her because she's kind of quiet and introverted in ways, and to call and tell me, I figured it must have got, and I've been like this over the whole thing anyway, but she's absolutely thrilled with, so let's hope it stays that way.
Hank?
Yes, I had a chance to get over to the high school and have a good visit with Mr. Jordan, and kind of get a feel of which way he's guiding the high school. Had a chance to go on a tour of the Marshall conversion and see what's going on in that elementary campus that's looking like a district office. And today, my granddaughter was showing swine at the Humboldt County Fair, and during that time, students were talking about checking their schedules at Eureka High, and they were able to have results from their efforts to check. So I could overhear kids talking in the FFA group about what classes they had and what changes they could make. And all of them were very positive responses to the refining the scheduling efforts at Eureka High.
Good, great. Wendy?
I had a chance to go to both the Zane campus and the high school campus in the past couple of weeks, and nice to see everybody busy getting ready for a new group of kids coming in. And I, for one, am very happy school's going to be starting soon. And I know Joshua is thrilled, and I continue to be impressed and gratified by the course offerings we have at the high school. He's going to be a freshman this year, and we've done great work. It's impressive, and I just want to thank the teachers and welcome them back, and the staff, administration, and we're ready to go.
Okay. John?
Well, my grandson starts Zane also, but he wasn't at the orientation. He's on vacation. So, but that's all I have.
Okay. I also had an opportunity, I went at the same time Hank did, to see the Zane, or the Marshall conversion, and wow, it is pretty exciting. It's kind of amazing to see it all come to fruition after all the discussion. And I also have a report on Safe Routes to Schools Eureka Task Force, which you all know I've been serving on. And the first thing is round 1 of the county Safe Routes to Schools grant includes significant improvements to the routes around Grant School. So similar to the amount of money that we got, or improvements around Washington, we're going to see some improvements around Grant with interesting, a raised crosswalk on Oak Street north of the school where the buses kind of pull in, so it's kind of interesting, that'll be. There's going to be new sidewalks on Oak Street where there hasn't been sidewalks ever, which is really going to be nice. And on F Street, which most people are going to see, they're going to do something called bulb outs. So it's going to narrow F Street at the intersection of F and Oak with the goal of slowing traffic down as they come to that crosswalk where our kids cross. So that's Grant. Lafayette, I told you about the fact that they did an audit. We did an audit in June. So that's come back, and they hope that the Lafayette improvements will be done in round 2 of the grant. But there's a list of district ideas for the district to do, and one of them is changing the bus drop-off from in front of the school to Park Street. So that's a different. We did it. It's done. So,
We repainted the inside as well.
and so there's a number of other smaller, but hopefully really beneficial improvements to the access in and around the school when parents drop off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon. Monies were also found to put on a bike rodeo for Alice Burney this fall. And PTA received a Humboldt CAN grant to do education and incentives for walking and bike riding to school. And there is a crossing guard program grant submitted by Humboldt County Public Health, and we will know by December whether or not that is received. So lots going on with the Safe Routes to Schools that are impacting Eureka City Schools, and the district has really benefited. And as I understand, the only other district that has expressed any interest is the Fortuna Elementary District. And so we're going to continue to benefit, apparently, as long as other districts are not showing any interest. It's kind of interesting.
Is a raised crosswalk a speed bump? Is that
Basically,
what you're talking about?
yes.
Is those?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
But they have stripes on them.
Yes,
Yeah,
there's
they're
stripes on them.
glorified.
Yes.
They're not like
Speed
the
bumps
ones
with
at Zane.
Yeah, yeah, they're
They're a
big.
little more.
Okay, I'll move down to public comment on non-agenda items. I have one green sheet here. Howard Green, did I pronounce it correctly? If you would come up to the podium here.
Here?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. I keep hearing all this talk about grandchildren. I have to confess that my grandson is 30 years old. His son was born last March.
Wow.
Good.
I drove into Eureka with my family back in 1960 on a rainy Easter Sunday. And of course, put my kids in school at the time. I was a Navy recruiter here, and I served here as a recruiter until 1963, where I went back to sea and pulled one tour off of Vietnam. Then I retired in 1964 after 20 years in the Navy. And at that time, we were thinking about trying to get the NJROTC program started in Eureka High School. And I wasn't alone on that. There were many others. Some of you may remember John Morris. He asked me to come to the school on several occasions to talk to some students that I guess you were saying they were in a little bit of trouble. And fortunately, I think that through my efforts and the efforts of some other people that were involved too, some of those students managed to stay in school and graduated. And then we came to the school board, members of Navy League actually, came to the school board and tried to get the program started. And eventually the program was started with some opposition, I'll have to admit. And now I've learned that not the school, but the Navy has interrupted the program to a degree and is threatening to withdraw its support of the NJROTC program as it stands. However, there is an alternative, and I don't know all the details of it, but it's the Navy National Defense Cadet Program or something similar to that name. And this would apparently relieve the Navy of some of the responsibility and put that responsibility onto the high school itself. I don't believe at this time, and I don't know all that much about the program, but I understand that it would not make any serious changes in the actual funding of the program. And I certainly support the program. There can be no question of that. During my time in Eureka, both of my children graduated from Eureka High School. My son went on to the academy, and they were not in the program because they graduated long before it started, which was still over 30 years ago. I have never met a student in the program that didn't impress me with their own feelings of the program. They were proud of it. Graduates that I have encountered, I suspect some of them are going around with doctorate degrees now. Many of them have gone on to prestigious universities and colleges throughout the United States. And I hope that you study the program carefully and that you will support keeping it regardless of what the Navy decides to do. And as I understand it, the only reason that the Navy is considering withdrawing its support is because they don't have the required number of students in the class. Any school with enrollment of less than 1,000 students has to have at least 100 students in the program, according to the Navy. But they don't consider the fact that the ADA is actually down in the schools throughout Humboldt County, actually, I guess. So that's basically all I have to say. I hope you will support the program, keep it. I know it does wonderful things for the children that are in it. Many of the past instructors have even donated a lot of their own time and money to help students that were not financially capable to go on some of the field trips that they go on to. We've had them go on Navy ships to Hawaii. We've had them go to many military installations where they learned more about patriotism and about responsibilities. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Howard.
I still got 3 minutes.
You got more than 3 minutes.
If you have any questions, feel free.
Thank you.
Okay, without that, I'm going back to the Giants ball game.
What was the score when you left? What was the score when you left? Was there a score when you left?
The score was tied when I left.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment on non-agenda items? No? Okay, we'll move down to the consent calendar. Are there any board member questions or concerns?
Yes?
Okay.
Yes. Item number 10, I don't know if we should just discuss it, but there's quite a bit of usage, English usage items in the contract that would suggest that it's kind of muddy, and I think we need to review the contract a little more thoroughly. Item 12.
J10?
Item
Are you
10.
speaking-
What page is that?
Item 10.
Page 5? Is that where you're looking? J10?
J10?
J10.
J10.
Okay. Page 5.
You want to go into it right now, or?
Give a couple examples.
Under inventory, lack of usage on a telephone line is an initial indication that the line may not be unnecessary.
It may not
May
be
not be
necessary.
There's some others in there, but
Okay.
it's just,
It's
Messy?
riddled, is what you're saying.
there's a
throughout
number
the-
of small things, and I don't want to wordsmith it.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
is it enough that you believe we need to pull it and have it come back? Or do you think, and what is the status of this? Is this ours, or is this, can we change this? We've had it for years.
No, this report, you mean?
The service
contract.
agreement, this particular contract?
Yeah, I mean, is it changeable?
We can check with them and see. It's the first time we've done this. This is an ongoing contract, obviously we've done this with them in the past. And it's kind of a roach process, if you will. But there's areas we have concern with, we can certainly take it back.
So it's,
Page 2, confidentiality, number 5, third line, except as may be necessary or desirable to further to be business interests of the district. It's just
So it's grammatical concerns in a
Well,
way?
There's
And-
grammatical changes, there's enough
And
core
intent.
English in it that it should be reviewed and cleaned up
Yes.
before I'd be willing to sign off on
Okay.
So we're okay with bringing it back at another meeting then?
it. Is there a time constraint, a
Yeah,
problem?
is there?
It turns around very quickly, I think,
So we could bring
So
it
we're
back to
gonna-
the
we're
next
gonna
board
pull
meeting?
it?
so, yes.
We're okay. All right, then we'll pull J10.
Item J12, I would like to have the program explained a little bit before we approve the agreement with the county. I'm not clear what that program is.
Okay, then let's pull that and put
Yeah.
it under discussion action.
Okay. J12, that's the Workforce Investment
Workforce,
Act.
Yes, I
agreement.
have questions on that too, so, okay.
And then J13, I would vote to accept the actuarial study, but I'd like to agendize a report on the meanings within it.
I didn't hear what you said.
I would like to agendize a report on that study
Okay.
to further understand it. We can accept
Okay.
the report, that's fine, but
By agendize, you don't mean tonight.
not tonight.
Okay.
Bring it back at another meeting.
At another
For, just as a discussion item then?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe we're just accepting the study.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. But you'd like to have a better understanding of what this study means.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, any other concerns by board members? Well, and J7 is not, is tabled till next, so that one's. Anybody in the audience have any comments on the consent calendar? Okay. I need a motion to approve the consent calendar without J7, J10, and J12.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent calendar without J7, J10, and J12. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion carries. So now we'll move to discussion action to discuss J12, which is the workforce agreement with the County of Humboldt, or the Workforce Investment Act. Do you want to ask your question, or do you want me? Okay. You know, and this is, we've accepted this money before. The big change this year is that we are taking on the
Northern Humboldt.
Northern Humboldt region. And I looked at the amount of money, $95,840 for the Eureka region and $75,813 for the Northern Humboldt. And when I read through the contract, we have to provide either a match in money or in-kind match. So my first question was, which one are we doing as a district?
And I know, you know, again, this is a new one relatively to me, but I do know that we are utilizing it to, I would say it's certainly in-kind is a portion of this grant in the sense that it will help offset costs that we may already have. I also, I'm not sure if Paul would have a better understanding of direct contribution that we have to make, but I am very much aware of in-kind support.
Okay,
It would be in kind
Yeah.
support.
okay,
All of it.
Yes.
okay. There's a lot that this grant, or this, accepting this money is asking of the district. And so my next concern was, are we getting a significant return on our investment, you know, or how much staff time is going to have to be utilized?
For grant, in order to oversee the grant oversight and that kind of thing. There is some funding built into that. It will help, you know, fund some administrative time and things like that. In my opinion, because of some of the grant funds that we've lost, like our service learning and our special projects, this kind of helps fill the gap for our students to really look at furthering their post-secondary, whether it's career or vocational options. It seems to me that from what I've looked at the grant that it's manageable. But again, it's going to be my first experience with it, particularly with the inclusion of Northern Humboldt. One of the things I like in particular about this grant is it's written to ensure that students get a portion of the funds directly in a way, and I don't mean paying them to do work, but that we have to show that we are giving them services specifically to students versus it's all administrative costs or it's curriculum costs. It's going to be direct services to kids. And in my opinion, that helps, like I said, fill some of the gaps that would be missing for our students getting ready to transition to the workforce without having the grant.
Is this going to take place through Eureka High School or through the Eureka Learning Center or
both?
All of the above?
Yes. The administrative oversight for the WIA grant will be Sandy Phillips, and yet it will serve the kids on both sites, including Northern Humboldt. That was the part of the grant as well. They're not doing it anymore, so we're providing
Will she have a
service for them.
liaison in Northern Humboldt, or will she be overseeing that as well?
We have a coordinator, or WIA coordinator, and the WIA coordinator will do the work with Northern Humboldt and with our district, and Sandy will just provide administrative oversight to that person. And that person is Georgine, I'd have to look up her name. Jordan Woods, right. I don't know if that answered all of your questions.
Yes.
So she'll have office space at the high school, office space at Joe Barnum. She will have, so she'll spend 1 day a week in Northern Humboldt, and then the remainder of her time will be at the high school.
Mm-hmm.
So she's covering this large distance just by breaking her time up among the facilities. And the in-kind is primarily from the adult education program.
Yes, thank you.
And is this a one-year contract? It says this agreement is for 2011 through 2014, and then back on page 17, it says this will remain in full force through June 30th, 2014.
It is a 3-year program.
So
Okay, so
we're signing on to it all 3 years.
So this how much here is times 3? Okay. Makes it a lot more money.
Yes, it does, sorry. Yeah, that wouldn't go very far over 3 years,
Yeah,
but per year makes it more palatable.
yeah, yeah. Okay, any questions from anyone in the audience? Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the agreement with the County of Humboldt for the Workforce Investment Act?
I so move.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with the County of Humboldt for the Workforce Investment Act. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. The motion carries. Okay, now we're down to discussion. Item L18, intent to change school name.
This is part of our ongoing, I would say, evolution of what we want to do in alternative education. In part, after we did the closure of Humboldt Bay and relooking at Zoe Barnum Continuation High School, we've had discussions here in open session about whether or not we wanted to continue with the Zoe Barnum High School or reflect the direction that we're going, which is more the Eureka Learning Center, which is more like an umbrella with specific programs underneath it. So what we're wanting to have a discussion about with the board is sort of, to some degree, the process that we go to choosing a particular name for, instead of Zoe Barnum, because I think some of the conversations we've had is there's historically a somewhat negative connotation to that name, and we want to have a fresh start. And we also felt this was an opportune time to get some direction on how we want to best do that. I know I've spoken with Sherry Jensen, and she has some ideas that I was going to ask her to share with the board on how to get some ideas about a name change for our continuation high school.
Well, we had an orientation on Monday, and so I wanted to send out a questionnaire to the students and parents and our staff on the name change and some of the things, so we can get some public input and see what their reactions are, and maybe to get some things from them so that we can, because more minds are better than just one. I did have a bit of a concern when it just comes to when we come up with the name, we have to be mindful of how it's going to read on the high school diploma. And so I'd like to kind of throw that out, that the current diploma doesn't specify continuation high school. And I think that that's an important thing, and I'm not sure that they had that as well as a credit recovery. So at this point, I'm trying to elicit some information from the public and from our parents.
And to some degree, it was responding to, we had talked about it being the Eureka Learning Center, a continuation high school. And so we were looking at, do we have to put continuation in there? And exploring that as an option. So we're not asking, obviously, for any action tonight, but just getting a sense of the direction with the survey to get input, then to bring it back to the board for further discussion is.
So are you saying that you found that the continuation high school had to be in the title?
No, we need to investigate that further.
We
We're not
want to
sure.
research.
Right.
Sure.
What we do know is it's currently in the school name that California Department of Ed has. So we need to further research whether or not it's an ed code requirement or not, and then get some ideas on what names might be suggested and bring that back to the board.
I have to say, Eureka Learning Center, in my mind, particularly when the trifold brochure first came, was never the name of the continuation high school. It
Correct.
wasn't Eureka Learning Center, a continuation high school. Eureka Learning Center was at the top.
Right.
Underneath were these bulleted programs, all under this umbrella. So I know I had brought up the idea, well, gee, is it enough to just call it continuation high school? Which is under the Eureka Learning Center, but
Right.
you could, I mean, the idea being that Eureka Learning Center might be a place. I mean, right now, the Eureka Learning Center programs are going to be at Winship, but we're looking to move the Eureka Learning Center programs to Lincoln.
Right.
They could be anywhere.
Right.
So I mean, in my own mind, I kept going, should it be Eureka Continuation High School? I don't know.
And we don't either, and so what we were thinking of a way to get some input from both the students and the parents, and then bring it back to the board for further discussion, because we weren't feeling like we knew what the name was yet. But we wanted to bring it up here to see if that fits with the direction that the board would like to see us take.
My 2 cents worth, if it's not absolutely necessary to include continuation high school in the name of it, that again, you're separating this is different than this diploma, and the diploma you get from Eureka High School is different than the one you might get from a continuation school.
Right.
And the Eureka Learning Center, and I said this when the trifold came out, and the word learning center, and I even looked up online, is attached to so many preschools and daycare. The words learning center is a little bit more juvenile than I think, and then that's just my impression. That just comes across, the words learning center strikes me as a younger people's facility than what we have going at that site.
So you're suggesting maybe looking at 2 things. One, the Eureka Learning Center.
I forgot what we came up with instead of learning center, and I think it was educational.
Academy, and
Educational
we put
center?
Academy away.
Right, academy wasn't going to go, but was it?
I don't remember another one. I thought it was
I think I said
Eureka
at the
Learning
meeting, I don't know
Academy.
the alternative. My brain won't come up with
Right.
an alternative, but
Right now, what does the diploma say? It doesn't say Eureka High School.
It says Zoe Barnum High School, I believe.
It says Zoe.
The current diploma says Zoe Barnum High School, and the only differences between the requirements For a Eureka High School diploma and a Zoe Barnum High School diploma are 20 elective credits. So all of your core curriculum is exactly the same amount of credits for English, math, science, health requirement, history requirements. So that's the only distinguishing factor.
But there's a board policy, and we don't have it in front of us, but there are different diplomas. And I think there's 3 different ones. And I know this was an issue when we had to establish these 3 different diplomas because we were concerned what business people would say if they, some business people
But
might not hire
Those
someone.
3 different types had nothing to do with.
I don't know.
Zoe.
I don't know that, so that's why I'm
They were primarily developed to address needs of students with disabilities who
Yes.
could not meet regular graduation requirements. And so there's a tiered certificate of accomplishment and achievement, and it was specifically for students with IEPs.
But I think, I haven't looked at it in
I
a
haven't
long
either.
time, that the regular diploma very specifically listed the graduation requirements. And if it did, then it's not going to have, I mean, it may be that we just didn't catch that Zoe Barnum or the continuation high school may be in a different board policy. I don't know. But I'm just putting out that question that maybe if we're bringing this back,
We need to
we need
bring
to look at our board
policy.
policy,
Absolutely.
with it,
policies
right,
or
with it.
policies. And,
Yep, absolutely.
And then check with CDE and then
And check with our community on name
just suggestions.
possibilities. Yeah.
Are you thinking about putting parameters on your questionnaire, or this is kind of what we're thinking of? Do you have preferences, or just giving them a blank slate to give input? What's?
For the survey?
Well, I was,
Did you have something in mind?
To be careful how you word it. Surveys can be,
I'm aware of that when I work on my thesis. It's, you don't want
Good.
to lead, and
Yeah,
you want to make
yeah.
sure that you're asking what you want the information from. So I already sat and was writing some of my, well, that might be leading work. So I will keep that in mind when formulating the questions and make sure I have a visible cards getting it out.
I do agree with Wendy. If we can leave the word continuation
Yeah,
out
me
of the
too.
title, we should.
I agree. We just want to make sure we can legally. But
Hank?
May I?
absolutely.
I was the second principal of Zoe Barnum High School. Claude Buckman, who's still alive, was the first one from 1964 until 1980. Zoe Barnum was quite a lady in education in this town for a long time. Businesses and the concern that business doesn't like a Zoe Barnum diploma, I would have to say, after spending 9 years as principal of Zoe Barnum, is false. It happens to have to do with the quality of the student. It has to do with the quality of work that the student performs. When they leave this area and go to Sacramento or wherever, it says high school graduation, yes, no. If you list your diploma, it doesn't say Zoe Barnum Continuation High School for that exact reason. At one time, the difference in graduation requirements were based on the fact that Zoe Barnum students were not required to take physical education. When the state required that, those 20 units came into play, and it was taken off the elective area. But all of the other graduation requirements are exactly the same. I have a hard time leaving the Zoe Barnum diploma and the name Zoe Barnum. We can have a Eureka Learning Center, we can have a Jacobs Educational Center, we can have a Lincoln Educational Center for an umbrella. But that high school and that name has meaning. And when employers find out a student is going to an alternative program of whatever type, it will not change based on that name. Perception has to come from the students and their ability to fulfill the work.
I think
I'm going to have to disagree with you, because as a business owner, what I get is a stack of applications with no name and no person attached to it. And if I had, you know, and I'm not saying that everybody does this, but when you get applications, you often don't see the person that's turning them in. I get a stack on my desk and I go through, and I get to judge by the words on the paper. And after you get through that process, the interview process, you can develop an understanding of that person. But I have a feeling and I have a fear that the words continuation high school is going to put that application to the bottom of the pile. It happens.
And Zoe Barnum, their title is not Continuation High School.
Right, but I'm saying whether it's Zoe Barnum or anything else, continuation high school, alternative education center.
I agree with what you're saying. To avoid that is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
But to change the name from Zoe Barnum to something else,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right. So
doesn't change
from
anything.
your perspective, it's still, should we leave Zoe Barnum or not?
Yes.
We
And
agree that
yes,
as long as we can, we'll leave continuation out of it.
Yes.
But it goes back to whether or not we want to continue with the Zoe Barnum. Part of the conversations we have had when we closed Humboldt Bay was expressed concern by some of those students and people that they didn't want to transfer from Humboldt Bay to Zoe Barnum because, again, their perception of what that meant. Mm-hmm. We believe Zoe Barnum offers a rigorous educational program for students, and we're very proud of the direction that Zoe Barnum is going and has gone. It's, again, trying to make it so it worked for a broader range of students than it had, given that we no longer had another alternative high school available.
Mm-hmm. And the Zoe Barnum discussion has been ongoing ever since, well, particularly since the Worthington issue came up, and we just kept running up against this. I hear what you're saying, and well, when we tried to move Zoe Barnum to Worthington, and we had a community outcry that was absolutely vicious.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievably vicious.
Unexcusable.
Well, that too, but, and that it was pervasive. And there were folks, I was the person who, I don't know, I was the board member that came back, and I had people telling me, I don't care what you call it, I don't care how good the program is, or how great those kids are. If they're from Zoe Barnum, they're the bad kids.
Yep.
And you're nothing you say will change my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And while philosophically I agree with you that no matter what we call it, that some of that may happen, but there was just, after numerous discussions, we just kind of came to a conclusion that this might be the right time to let it go. Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
that's just kind of where we arrived, was it might be. We don't know that it's going to succeed. We don't know, but it was so many negative, years of negatives that.
To me, then, maybe a recommendation to Sherry, well, that she include, do you want to continue with Zoe Barnum in the name as part of the survey? Mm-hmm. As part of the input that we get from students and families. And then maybe, rather than coming just with one name, we give two options based on the survey and continuing the conversations here, and then the board would vote on.
I hate to sound
Sorry.
well. I hate to sound negative, but those folks who've chosen Zoe Barnum
Are going to
they're converts. I mean, they love it there.
They do.
And they're fine with the name Zoe Barnum, and they're going to move through the program and be successful and move on. Yeah. It's the folks who are not in the program now who are the ones that we're trying to. So I need to open it up to maybe some folks in the audience probably at this point, if it's okay with the board, and we can come back to the board. So I saw Debbie at one time. You wanted to know? Rick? No? No one else wants to. Okay.
One time as principal of Humboldt Bay, I'd like to hear your perception.
I did not have a negative opinion of a name as Humboldt Bay or as Zoe Barnum. I think, again, very much like you expressed, it's the quality of education there that is reflected in the student's performance on the job or the young adult performance. I also see Judy's point about the community perception. But I think we've done much over the last 10 years, 15 years particularly, to really, make inroads into that perception. And I think it's been successful. There's a lot of collaboration with the traditional high school. I don't like to call it comprehensive versus continuation. I say traditional versus a continuation school. So I think that, I have no objection to the name Zoe Barnum High School. I think there's a lot of pride in it, and I think there's a lot of power in it. And I also know the family of Zoe Barnum personally, so that's,
And we did ask the family,
Yes.
and they're fine with
And
us,
they said that.
yes,
Right.
retiring the name.
Both Pat and Bob said,
Yes.
no problem.
Yeah. But it's up to, so, Valerie?
Well, I was just going to say, I know in the state, I've heard the term alternative high school used more, and I just wonder if that's a more modern, and I don't know that, I just said a more current term that really does reflect a different type of education for kids that want something different than the traditional, like you were saying. Because I think that's what I see Zoe has become in the 23 years I've been in district, is it has become really more of an alternative setting, and children choose to go there because it fits their learning style. And I think, I don't know, so we call it continuation, and I think really it's become more alternative to traditional.
Judy, there are about 527 continuation schools in California. The vast majority of them do not have continuation in their title. At the last California Continuation Education Association conference, a certain number of schools were recognized as model continuation high schools, but the actual title of the school did not have continuation in it. A few of them did have alternative, program of such and such an area. Most of them just plain have a name, and like high school.
And I think we'd agree that if we don't have to have alternative or continuation in there, we won't. I think the issue is it Zoe Barnum or something else?
Yeah.
And
That to me
public
is what the
perception
issue is.
key. How about it's a credit recovery type program where you can actually accumulate credits quicker than you can at a traditional high school. So let's call it the Accelerated Education Center. And I bet you would have people standing in line.
But then what would the high school be called?
Yes, Fran.
Are you intending the survey to only go out to the students and the parents of the zone?
Initially, I was just
Or
going
is
to
it going
elicit opinion from, because we're doing orientation with the new Humboldt Bay, so it was more, my thought was just the parents that are all coming, a lot of students that haven't been on our site. And the new Humboldt Bay students will be coming over, so it was kind of getting the feel for the merging of the two schools from student and parent population, as well as the staff, which, like Hank, may have that historical context, so that other thing that we're kind of talking about. But if people would like to review it or do it in another way, I'm sure that.
No, I wasn't even thinking about it, but I've lived here long enough to know that we went through this with the Worthington group, and in fact, I worked in a business where I almost got into a fist fight with a person who made the comment of, oh, that person is a Zoe Barnum, and what can you expect from them? Something was shoplifted or something like this. And it was on more than one occasion. It wasn't always shoplifting or whatever else. And it was this, oh, it was a Zoe Barnum student, what can you expect? And it used to be the thought that if they couldn't hack it at Eureka High School, they sent them to Zoe Barnum. And then it finally became a choice, because I had a number of my own students that I was absolutely surprised chose to go to Zoe Barnum, did very, very well. So it still is, this community, having lived here forever, does not forget very easily if there's something negative they don't like. So I think we need to really
Seriously,
about
look
it,
at
if we can come up with something that'll.
Yeah, and there was an outcry even when we moved to Winship, maybe not to the degree of
Yes.
Worthington, and that was
Right.
just 2
But there
years
was,
ago.
yes.
And there were some pretty heated town hall meetings.
They had people
To-
claiming their property values had gone down
Correct.
just
Yes.
hearing that those
Yes.
kids were going to that campus.
And I agree with
Yeah,
Hank,
I
once kids once people are involved with Barnum,
Yeah.
it's totally
that's
different.
great.
And people that are in the know
That's
know that
right.
it's a great
Yes.
program. It's the broader community, the greater community, and whether or not that's going to detract from kids being able to go there and be successful.
Right.
And the student who, may be struggling at Eureka High, and their parent, and they may even be receptive to going to Zoe Barnum, but their parent goes, oh no, I can't have a child going to Zoe Barnum. And I've heard parents who, it's just so frustrating, but
As a principal of Zoe Barnum, I've met with one or two of those people. I'm sure, Mrs. Pusillo and Sharon, you've had the same experience, and you sit down on the one-on-one meeting, the initial
Absolutely.
meeting, and you see that perception change and grow. John's had a child in Humboldt Bay, had to grow into that place and change and understand that it's the best thing for that student. What's in a name?
it's in a name.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, I do have to say that when my son was not having success at Eureka High, and so we discussed Zoe Barnum or Humboldt Bay, and my son, who was a tough kid, still tough, he literally cried at the idea of going to Zoe because it had a bad reputation. The word Zoe Barnum had a bad reputation among the younger kids. But he went ahead and went to Humboldt Bay, where he thrived. But the word, the title, Zoe Barnum, does have a bad image. And if we're expanding the program and we're improving the program and we're moving it, it's time to get a fresh start with a new image. And I think changing the names will really, really help.
Be very interested in seeing the results of the survey.
And maybe we need to, among staff, I don't know, go back out among staff and see if,
And seek some more input.
see what else folks are
I
thinking
hate to
about.
be one of those stick in the mud type people, but if you, especially on a survey, especially with the parents of kids that might actually be attending now, Zoe Barnum or Humboldt Bay, if we as a board haven't decided to change the name and you give them the option of keeping the Zoe Barnum name, and because they have a connection to that school, they choose to keep the Zoe Barnum, and then we vote to
Always
change it
different.
anyway, I
It
think
is.
we've taken a wrong step
Somehow.
here.
Good point.
And that's kind of why I was asking about the survey. I wasn't trying to say you couldn't write a good survey. I was just knowing that it's a double-edged sword
is.
when you go out and you ask folks. But I just want to say, whatever we decide on Zoe Barnum, I really feel the most important concept is that we have that title at the top, whether it remains Eureka Learning Center or whether it remains something else. But we need that name that's an umbrella for
Yes.
the variety of programs, as we talked about in our goals at the earlier workshop. That may expand, there may be, but if we can keep that umbrella title, I think that's a key part of.
Are you talking about having, let's say, the Eureka Education Center or the Eureka Learning, but that's not the name of the high school, that's the name of the building or the campus that is housing
It's
the
a collection
programs.
of programs.
And then
Yeah.
the high school would be
Alternative.
named something else, and the adult education would have its own.
Yes.
It's adult education, independent
It's just
study.
So
public
regardless of what
hospital.
you call the facility
Well,
that houses all the programs, each individual program would have their own name. So you might have two names. Is that
well,
what you're saying?
you would have the Eureka Learning Center, but it would be blank blank high school at the Eureka Learning Center, or the adult education program at the Eureka Learning Center.
The home and hospital.
The home and
at
hospital
Eureka.
at,
So we have two names to deal with. The facility name
sure.
and then the actual high school program name.
But it might actually not be a facility name. You have to be careful because adult education started moving when it was really good sized. there were programs all around but it becomes a Eureka Learning Center program. It's a Eureka Learning Center adult education program.
So it's not tied to a physical building.
Yeah.
It could be anywhere in Eureka where alternative programs are happening.
Right.
If a student graduates through independent study, what diploma do they get?
Depends on what school they're connected to. They could get a Eureka High School diploma, and they could get a Zoe Barnum High School diploma. Which is why I would.
That's a good point. Wow.
We have 2 high school diplomas and a Eureka Adult School diploma.
Mhm.
Those are the
Yeah.
3 diplomas
Yeah.
that exist.
Correct.
If you go on home and hospital, you broke both your legs and had to stay at home for your senior year,
Mhm.
okay?
It's either
It's the same
then,
thing.
Again, it's the
Whatever.
same thing. And so when we talk about that umbrella and how it all fits together, there's still probably going to be 2 diplomas.
Yes.
And there's also, I mean, just to throw another wrench into this, there's also, you have to consider, we have this partnership with Boston Reed. People are getting pharmacy technology certificates, state certifications, certified nursing assistant certifications. All of this is going to be under this one umbrella. It's not a matter of choosing a diploma. You know, that's just one program under this large umbrella. Something to consider, when we did our rebranding a few years ago, pre-flexibility,
Yes.
we renamed Eureka Adult School Career and Education Center. And we still have that Career and Education Center logo. We are Eureka Adult School under Career and Education Center, under Eureka City Schools. And so that's something to take into consideration because that's what we're doing. We're training students for careers and education. You know, so that's another thing to consider. We did a lot of work and got a lot of branding. And so if we want to capitalize on that, that's something to consider as well.
Good point.
That's
Maybe you should.
Eureka Career and Education.
It's called, I'm sorry, the Career and Education Center, Eureka Adult School.
And
That's when we find.
well, it was beautiful, the whole layout.
It was well done.
But I will say, because I was taking the CBE, what are the? CBT classes at the time. It was very difficult. People didn't know. It was like it would have been better to tack on Eureka Career and Education Center because folks were confused. They needed, it needed that Eureka tag in the front. I don't know, but that was just and nobody changed. It was like everybody answering the telephone was still saying.
So they'll still say Zoe Barnum.
And shortening it.
That's when we finally got rid of the wise old owl. Oh,
Yes,
so
yes,
happy
we
when
got rid of
But
yeah.
that was in response, very similar to what you're talking about, to having an umbrella of many, many programs. We're still at the job market. We're still serving, you know, a lot of off-campus programs. So it was just a way to capture all of the different things that we do.
Well, Ken Stoddard and I love the wise.
I know. Ken Stoddard, I discussed it many, many times.
I have a whole stack of mouse pads for you.
He'd love
He'd love it.
it. Okay, what
Where
I'm
do we
hearing,
go from here?
I'm hearing we're going to let Sherry work with you and decide what you want to do on a survey.
And bring it back.
We're going to bring back the it would be great for the board to be able to review the Career and Education Center logo and materials and when that program was first launched, to kind of see what that looked like. And you were going to get the board policies.
Got that.
I think.
But
Is
Ed
that-
code too.
in the meantime, I'd like to know if we're going to offer the keeping of the name Zoe Barnum with a survey that's going out in a matter of days as one of the options. Is that correct?
I don't have to include it as that.
I'm
It
asking.
seemed like there was a concern, so I could just be open-ended and not even approach that subject. mean, there could be an open-ended question where
Sure.
it could be,
Sure.
you know, they can submit it on their own, but
Right.
it won't be leading, it won't be like, should we keep, or on a scale,
Yeah.
da-da-da.
Yeah.
You know, so that won't be an option. It could be open-ended, they could come up with their own.
I think the idea, go ahead, John.
No, I just said great.
Oh, okay. For me, it's, if you can make it sound this way, I don't know, it's hard, but it's not like entering a contest with turning in your little sheet of paper with your recommend, and we're gonna pick one out of the hat and choose you and you win a prize, and we're just looking for ideas, and, you know, the board we'll talk about them.
Yeah,
Friendly.
good point.
Yeah.
Yes, because we have to be careful with that.
Yeah, we do.
Had some-
Yeah.
Some experiences where we've done a survey and they've come back a certain way, and they think that's the way it's gonna go,
Yeah.
because that's maybe the majority. But the
Right,
board
and you don't want to get
agree
into
with
that.
you and to that.
We were asked for input and it was not considered.
Right.
You don't want to go there.
Yes. Okay. All right, we'll move to L19. Facilities, update on the status of Marshall Annex, the district office, Lincoln and Worthington.
And again, as part of the board report, both Hank and Judy mentioned that they had toured what we're doing at the Marshall Annex. So in addition to reviewing the status of that, we would like to hear, or to offer to the board a report on where we are with Lincoln and a little bit of where we are with Worthington. So as our new person who oversees facilities, I'm going to turn it over to Lori Alexander.
Well, I've been sitting here writing down all the possibilities of what we would like to call that building. I have about 8, and I was thinking about doing a survey. No, I'm just kidding.
Construction workers.
Well, right now with the district office sale, I guess is a good place to start with. And we are right on target for the most part with the sale of this building, this facility here. We did extend escrow just a little bit, so we will hopefully be closing on the 16th. The buyers are continuing to come by and measure and scope out the outside and look at absolutely everything that's here, so I don't, at this point, foresee any concerns with that. And we're also fairly close to being on target with our move to the Marshall Conversion Project Annex District Office. And we kind of think of that project in 3 phases. The first phase being one side where a lot of the support staff are. Phase 2 is the side where a lot of the administrative support and their direct support staff are. And phase 3 is the complete other wing, where the boardroom is, and on the other side of the firewall, which is really what is kind of calling that phase 3. We are hoping to gain complete access to phase 1 and phase 2 by this weekend. And then with that, next week we will move into working on the cabling for the phones and technology, finishing up some of the fine-tuning of the floors, and preparing to move actually to that facility. I'm looking at my handy-dandy calendar right here. That we would be able to move all staff and everyone over before Labor Day and have us up and functional for when we come back from Labor Day weekend. It means a lot of pushing and a lot of, crossing fingers that there aren't any unforeseen glitches, because they're working quite a bit around there. We were there last night, what was it, about 6:30 even, and I go by often at that time, and there are still folks that are in there working. But it's looking really great. I met with Principal Jordan earlier this week, and we looked at what that will look like once school starts, because we still will have construction, and kind of mapped out some safety routes, how students will access the jewelry and the ceramics buildings over there. And we think we've got that all worked out. We are opening J Street, so there will be a little bit more of a flow there for where we are with that. Kind of moving on to where Lincoln is. I was there early this morning as well. And Humboldt County Office of Education, they had their moving vans there, their trucks. They've taken kind of ownership, if you will, of the 5 classrooms where they will have their preschool programs. Our folks have been really busy helping them to do that, and I encourage you to go by and actually see that as well, because there's been a lot of work put into that facility, and I think it's really nice to have someone in that facility right now. The neighbors are out peeking around the corner. They like seeing that movement that's happening at the Lincoln site. So that's really nice. And as a former principal of Lincoln, it's nice to see that as well. Let's see. Worthington has the Yurok tribe has begun modernizing. I guess that's not really the right word, but they have their projects that they're working on over there that they're kind of updating and preparation for their Head Start program and their occupation of that facility as well. They're upgrading the restrooms and doing some windows and some painting. And again, our school sites now have that movement on their campuses of adults and students that will soon be occupying those spaces. Questions?
When do you see our first board meeting at the Marshall site?
At the Marshall site, probably not until the middle of October, just to be safe. Hopefully the first meeting in October.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to jump too far ahead and see.
So our meetings in September will be on the Eureka High campus in the wherever.
Yes. We have a couple of options that we're looking at, whether it's on the Eureka High campus. We also, I don't know if we tossed out the idea of looking at the Humboldt County Office of Education. They do not have their board meetings in the evening, to see if we wanted to, for the month of September, for that board meeting. I don't know if anyone is interested in that option, but we could definitely have them at Eureka High. But they already have it all set up. It wouldn't take kind of taking down the auditorium or the cafeteria area in any way, shape, and form, if they would allow us to do that.
Would the lecture hall work?
Pardon me?
Would the lecture hall at Eureka High work?
We've looked at the lecture hall. We're a little worried about the space up in front and just the structure of that.
We've also looked at whether or not we could have the September 6th board meeting here, even if everybody else is moved out, since we have extended escrow to the 16th. That may be an option, because we really only need lighting, and I'm assuming we'll still have the electricity. So we're looking at a couple of different options.
As long as we didn't need phones, for the most part, I think we'd be okay.
Right. We won't have phones on the 6th, but, so those are kind of what we're looking at. Maybe only having one board meeting in September, that's another consideration. And if we could do it here the 6th, then by October we'd have a better idea. We may only be displaced one meeting.
September is a tough one to not
It's
have.
a tough one. There's a lot to do in September.
Yeah.
There is.
Regarding Worthington, the modifications are, okay, as far as code and DSA, how thoroughly are the UROCs abiding by those regulations?
Well, according to their lease, they have some boundaries that they need to stay within on what it is that they are doing and not doing. But it's, I don't know if you spent more time looking at the lease. It hasn't been on the top of my priorities right now. It's mostly been Marshall.
I do know that we do not have to meet DSA because of the use of that building at this time. They don't have to do, it's not the same as a public school. So they're not having to they don't have to go through the school architects or any of that kind of approval.
My concern is that it is a school, and if they make modifications that are not DSA approved, we're out on a limb.
Correct. Well,
And I'm very concerned about that, as well as there's been talk of the potential sale,
Yes.
compared to a continued lease.
And they're also talking about putting in a kitchen.
yes, that's one of their projects is redoing the kitchen.
They're going to put that in. Needs to be, I would think, I don't know what's in.
I'm pretty sure the contract talked about the work had to be to code.
Correct, absolutely to code.
But it did not have to be to DSA specifications, and I'm pretty sure
That's correct.
Steve Hartzell said we can't require that of any person or individual or group that's
Entity.
leasing our facilities. We cannot, in that kind of manner. We can't. I don't know.
That's my
but that was my
recollection as
understanding.
well, and it seems like that was a topic of discussion on more than one occasion, and it was clarified by legal counsel that we can't require it as part of the lease. Even if we end up resuming occupation of that building again.
We just have to tear it out.
And I think in part, and at least in my opinion, it's still better to have it occupied and maintained and brought up to code, because that's a lot of work we would have had to do anyway. And it's certainly better for our facility to have that occur. Would offset whatever we might have to redo or do to bring it up to DSA if we do get the building back and we want to utilize it as either for sale or as a school again. That's what I recall of our conversations.
And with their current lease is a lease purchase option. So it's kind of in their boat at the end of 2 years whether they want it or not. And so the amount of money that they're putting into that building, I don't know where they're going to go with that, but I can report back to you. I can go check it out and see what they're doing over there.
Well, since it's a 2-year lease option, there's no hurry and shouldn't get to the top of your list anytime soon. But there is interest.
Okay, will do.
And where did we end up with the facility workshop? What did we decide? Are we scheduling a separate facility workshop?
Would the board like that?
Well, the
Planning
original
on it.
plan
We had
was
talked about
in September, but at first we were going to link it to another board meeting, but now we're talking about, we don't know where the board meeting.
Right.
So I'm asking.
And we also talked about making kind of a town hall, more of a town hall meeting, right?
Not this one.
Not
this.
Facilities.
No, it was to choose a topic, possibly Winship charter ideas or or anything else, but this was supposed to be just a working.
Right, and it was more, okay, let's revisit where is our long-range planning for our
Right.
facilities, not necessarily reporting back
Right.
on what we're currently doing with our facilities.
Right.
It's looking at what was our
Yes.
facility long-range plan a couple years ago when we developed, where are we now, and where are we planning on going in
Yes.
the future.
And Hank,
That's
as a
what
new
it
board
is.
member, wanted
Yes.
to be brought up to speed, and
Yes.
then we would,
Yes,
And-
we
and
did
one-
discuss that. I
Okay,
don't
and-
recall that we have scheduled it.
So we're not, are we,
Oh,
what does the board? It usually takes us a minimum of 2-3 hours to discuss facilities.
right.
Everybody seems to
Should
weigh in
things
on
start
that.
slowing down, hopefully, and get us in place by November? Because I wouldn't be adverse to looking that far ahead and scheduling something at that time,
Right.
rather than to try and press something more into what's going on now.
September.
Right. And then we'll know,
Definitely not
are we able to
September.
close out those projects, quote
Yeah.
unquote? I mean, there's always sort of finishing touches.
You're okay?
Okay,
You're okay?
so we'll tickle file it for November?
You want November or October?
What,
November.
All right, okay.
okay. So that-
Elk hunting is in October.
The what?
What's in October?
Elk hunting.
Elk hunting. Oh, I see.
We won't schedule much in October then, in consideration for our newest board member.
Okay.
Now we know what is priority.
Now we know.
They shoot elk in April?
Okay, is there anything more on
I think that
facilities?
gives us an idea. Any more questions from the public?
Yeah, any questions from the audience? No? Okay, we will move to L20, report on the new program for 2011-12, positive behavioral interventions and supports.
It's a process for capacity building, advocates development and use of the continuum of behavioral supports. It continues on with the next slide. The components of PBIS, it has high expectations for all students, even those who have different needs, special ed needs, all sorts of needs. It's high expectations for all. It has it prioritizes social behavior with academics in mind. It's team-driven and database decision-making, and you're going to learn a little bit more about that tonight. It's consistent and predictable environment. So our campuses are consistent, they are predictable. One of the reasons that this is important to me personally is I have been a site administrator at 4 different schools since 2002, and I also worked at Eureka High. And so at every school I have been to, we have some behavioral issues, and at every site, the systems that are in place are different. And the behavioral issues, as you'll hear and maybe you know, are not lessening in our society and in our schools, but they're actually increasing. And so we are really looking at ways to support all students and be consistent. So they have just a few clear expectations that are explicitly taught, and the basic rules that we will decide on as a group could be something as simple as be safe, be respectful, and be responsible. And through this training and agreement and consensus building by the sites, we'll help students know what that looks like. More will come on that. It has high frequency positive feedback, so that obviously positive behavioral is in there, so it's a lot of positive feedback on a regular basis, and it's positive and inclusive culture. Now, it is also has an RTI model, and you hear a lot about RTI with academics. We've been talking about that for many years here, last few years. And so it's a similar pyramid in behavioral interventions where basically 80 to 85% of the students would respond to a low-level tier 1 type of intervention, and then about another 5 to 10% of the students might need something additional. And then you have that top tier, that small percentage of students who really need something that's way more individualized. So the background of this is that last fall, when I moved to Lafayette School, I saw a flyer that came out from the Humboldt County Office of Ed, and it was a bullying prevention workshop put on by Lynn Garrett, who came out from Sonoma County. And so I assembled my safety committee and many other schools. I know Alice Burney was there, and some other people from other Eureka City Schools were there, met in the building. And when I was there, I had one thing in mind, to find that magical curriculum that was going to solve all my problems. So we sat through the day and met in teams, and we looked at what they had out there on the tables, and they had some things I was familiar with. When I was at Alice Burney, second step was taught by our school psychologist Valerie Franklin, and we had extra time. We had purchased extra time with her, and she taught 2nd through 5th grade, year-long grade level curriculum. That was the whole 4 years I was there. So we were using consistent and language with the kids. We were all on the same page with it, and it really made a difference, I feel, over time. But that's expensive, and we don't have school psychologists in that kind of time these days. So we were looking for something else. A number of things that they had on there, including Don't Laugh at Me and other curriculum, didn't quite fit what we were looking for. But they did have this book there called Best Behavior, and so we ended up coming back after that, my safety committee, and kind of a little bit of a loss, not exactly sure what to do. But Rich had come or heard about it, the bullying policy that all schools need to make sure that our bullying policies were up to date. And so that headed into another direction because he had been hearing from me and Greg, others, that we're having some issues at our schools that we needed some help with. And with one-side administrators, our schools got bigger, we didn't have additional supports. We were really spending a lot of time dealing with disciplinary issues, and so we were looking for support. So we met, the district administration pulled together a summit here. Greg called it a bully summit. I always called it a bully prevention summit, where we assembled all of the admin, district admin, and psychologists and counselors in this room to talk about what we had, the curriculum we had, and practices that we had had in place over the years that we felt were effective, or what could we do, what could we go forward with. And we kind of got to the point of like, I don't know. And so anyway, Greg and I and Sherry at the time ended up working on deciding it would be a committee and look and see what we could find curriculum-wise. And so I met with Greg, and Sherry was along, and bringing the high school perspective and me with the elementary perspective. And we ended up looking at some curriculum, and Rick had been using something like this at the high school that Greg had known about, and Rich had used this before or knew about it. So Greg brought his books, and we all read them and came back and met and decided that we're going to investigate this program. So I ended up calling the University of Oregon, which is where this program originated out of, and met with the author, talked to the author on the phone, Jeff Sprague, actually through email, and a number of times and realized that what they had for training was basically we would send a team up there for about 3 days, and that would be our training, kind of like a trainer-trainers model, and we bring that back here. And I'm thinking, okay. But at the same time, around that same time, I had information that there's a consultant that is trained in this method called PBIS, Positive Behavioral Interventions and Supports, and he is a consultant for many schools in Northern California and Southern Oregon, and he's currently a consultant for Fort Bragg. So we were able to arrange a meeting with him and conversations with him with district administration, which brought us to where we are next on the slide. We ended up creating a June 10th overview presentation for site representatives from all of our schools. We invited all of our schools here. So in this room, we had Dale Myers, the consultant of PBIS, and we had little teams from all the elementary schools and some representation from secondary. And they listened to his 2-hour presentation, which I have a copy of a PowerPoint for you of that presentation. Judy was able to come to that one and learn about it with us. After that, our site, my site in particular, the teachers here were on board. They really liked it, but they did not want to make a decision for the whole staff based on the 3 or 4 people that were here, because the consultant made it real clear that this is not a top-down type of a system, that it really takes buy-in and consensus building and everybody agreeing to it, and it'll fall apart if people are independent contractors doing their own thing. So we ended up brainstorming and came up and realized, oh, we have one more minimum day, the last day of school. And so Jan Schmidt went back to my side all excited, going, guess what? I've created an opportunity for you to listen to Dale Myers come. And all the teachers in my room were like, all excited, because my staff, who had heard him, were really interested, and everybody wants anything they can get a handle on, helping them to be able to teach their children in a better way by helping with the management. And anyway, I thought I was going to be shocked, but I wasn't, and we created an afternoon where he came to Lafayette School on the last day of school, and it was voluntary for the teachers from Alice Fernie and Lafayette, and a few others from Washington and Grant attended as well. We had 47 people came on the last day of school to the Lafayette. We did get a pizza and a salad, but they came to the Lafayette School for 2 hours when all they really wanted to do was close up their classrooms, file their report cards, and their cues. We ended up handing out a survey, a little questionnaire, and of the 47 people, I had 32 responses, and 32 said, yes, let's go with this, and I have one that said, I think we could do it on our own. Well, that's pretty good odds that people were really in favor of it. So we brought that information back. I was working closely with Rich and Greg, and we ended up, right after that meeting with our staff, actually, Lori, Georgiana, and Kathy, on the phone, we ended up creating what this calendar could look like with the consultant for this upcoming year, and that's where we are right now. So the consultant also felt very strongly that all staff members of the sites that are going to implement this should hear the presentation and understand what's being asked of them and their group and what we're doing. So we have now created an opportunity, voluntary opportunity, for the staffs of the schools that have not had an opportunity to hear Dale, come to the Washington School cafeteria, that would be the Washington and Grant staffs, on the morning of August 23rd, next Tuesday, to hear him speak, do his condensed 2-hour PowerPoint for 2 hours, and then also I've been in contact with Chuck, and he's arranged to offer that opportunity to the Zane staff at the Zane Lecture Hall from 1:15 to 3:15. We created a calendar for the day, and one of the things that is really important with this is not just school teachers that are going to be on a PBIS team. Each school would have a team that's 6 to 10 people. They require the principal or the top site administrator to be on the team, as well as a parent who's not an employee. So you get the complete parent voice and not an employee voice. Classified members, we're having our ACES coordinators on it, and then also teachers. So kind of coming up with that ratio of 6 to 10 people who can commit to 2 years of training. This is a 2-year commitment for the people on this team. So then you see the next slides have the dates that we have lined out for the teams trained to come together and get trained by Dale. So it's about 50 people that will be going through this training each time that he's here on those dates that are there. November 1st is the day that's already on our schedule as a professional development day. So we're gearing that towards PBIS because that day we'd be bringing the rest of our staffs up to speed on what we're doing. Teams have to have work to do, then we go back and have to commit 15 minutes of a staff meeting every month to talking about PBIS. So it ends on, doesn't end, but at the end of the actual scheduled dates that are on January 6th, we have a half a day, which is a minimum day we're adding to our elementary calendars. They will not be adding any minimum days to theirs. But on January 6th, we're going to have a minimum day for elementaries where we have our PBIS teams will be training the rest of our staff, getting ready for the kickoff. And the kickoff is the following Monday, January 9th, where our teachers teach our students what is expected, how to be safe, be respectful, and be responsible on all the areas of our campus. I'm not an expert on PBIS, I'm just an expert on the organization. So I'm going to be going through the year-long training with my team to become an expert, but I do have Dale's PowerPoint slides from the 2-hour presentation that he's going to be doing on the 23rd. I'm going to hand you out as well if you can't make it, but we'd love to have you there at either one of them. And then the other thing is that the last slide here basically is saying that we scheduled out some weeks. We had to book his time because he's filling up fast. And what he would do on the following weeks, when he would come to each school site one day during that week for a half a day to do some coaching or teamwork to then implement the school-wide into the classrooms. Because at first we're looking at on the campus in the general areas and the common areas that we all travel and the students come to, the cafeteria, the hallways, the bathrooms, the office, playground, and then it's how to help the teacher implement it into their classroom. And that's the second part. One of the things that I saw that in the board packet, you had the memo that I had sent out to the other administrators, and I didn't clip all of his contract, but I wanted our administrators to know that what the district's commitment is and what the school's commitment is relating to this. It's not a 3-day training and good luck. He's going to be back and supporting us, following through the process. And the people that have heard him really, really like him.
Okay, so that's different than what this one says, the one that was on our board
the
pack?
August 23rd, well, the August, that might have been a little bit different. Let me see what that one says.
Okay, the August 23rd says 8 a.m. to 11:15 in the morning. Is that what it is?
I'm sorry, that had changed from, when I sent this one out, that got changed because at that time, that was actually going to be one of the team days.
Okay.
And it was decided that it's not a good idea to be pulling teachers out of their classroom working on a team when they have to get ready for the school. Kids coming the next day, so.
This one's right.
Yeah.
And okay, tell me what page
This
it
one's
is
right. It's
again.
on the last page, the boxes. On the left, top left, has the date sometimes. And
August 23rd, 9:15. Okay, and is this the same one I already saw? Okay.
best I know, Zane
Actually,
doesn't
you
have
saw
a
this
lecture
one will
hall.
be a little bit more condensed, because
Okay.
a little bit longer.
Okay. Did this already.
I'm going to hand you his PowerPoint that he will be handing out for these for next.
Thank you. I'd like one. Thank you.
Zane doesn't have a lecture hall. Where is it?
Well, he
It's in
told
the
me it was
cafeteria.
He told me it was what other halls they have it in? Not a hall, lecture room, lecture facilities, they checked that.
Cafeteria.
It was a
Small
classroom. No, it's a P12. It's the, or A12. It's 12A. It's the one criteria for his room. It's huge.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know what room you're
it's
talking about. It's
turning
also in
into
that room?
Yeah, yes, it's
Okay.
50 new staff development.
It's P12.
Yes.
I want to say, I think it's building A12.
It's building A.
I'm kind of like partially over the accounts in my head. Sorry.
Fran?
I wanted to ask a question. Have you considered, or would it be worthwhile to consider having a noon monitor or one of the monitors as part of your team?
Absolutely.
Because that seems to be what I'm hearing is that they have a hard time, and I think if they're adequately trained, they wouldn't have such a hard time.
Right, and it's bringing them up to the speed of what we're going to be training the kids to do as well. But absolutely, in my school, the district, each principal can work out your own team, but absolutely having a monitor also get you frustrated.
That's
But try.
Oh.
The bus driver might have to come in and out because
Yeah.
they drive bus. So.
But that's
and
a-
I hear we might be short bus drivers.
We are short.
But I really think that's another thing, especially at Lafayette.
But that's a very good idea to include some of these people that, people have concerns that they don't know what the rules are or whatever.
And we certainly would love to have you come to any of our trainings too.
Thank you.
So January 9th is the kickoff, you said. Does that mean the kickoff for 4 elementary schools and Zane?
If we can get Zane's teachers trained ahead with their
Okay.
grade schedules, that might be very possible.
Okay.
We haven't quite figured that out, especially with the change in administration there.
So for sure, it's the 4 elementary
For
schools,
five, absolutely.
January 9th, going forward. Great. Thank
And
you.
when this is finalized, I mean, everything will get
Keep your breath.
We'll keep us abreast. Thank you. So when would you like, I had originally written, have you come back to report to us in December, but maybe I should wait till, is that?
More like February, maybe,
Oh, more
after
like-
it's rolled
yeah,
out, and how's it
After
I'm
going?
back anytime.
Okay,
Yeah.
February. Nikki, we'll tickle it. Thank you,
Thank
Jan.
you.
Any other comments from anyone in the audience?
Since
Okay.
I'm standing up, can I just say I want to really thank the courtyard and everybody that had anything to do with getting Lafayette School up and running and looking really beautiful, including that Safe Routes to School. Thank you for bringing me that report. We were able to get it all repainted, and it just looks really great. So please come by Lafayette. Let's see it.
Thanks, Jan. Okay, are we down to L21, update on the 2010-2011 year-end closing?
I'm going to start doing these things alphabetically. In September, for the September board meeting, we'll be bringing you the unaudited actuals for 2010-11. And we're just putting the finishing touches on closing out 2010-11 right now. So the numbers I'm going to share with you at this point are preliminary. Please remember that, and we'll have the full and complete official report in September. But the last update, really for the 11-12 budget, as well as where we stood for 10-11, happened with the June 22nd budget adoption report. So I wanted to kind of provide a bridge, if you will, between that report and what you will see coming up in September, and just a couple of the numbers that kind of jump out at us, if you will. So looking at the unrestricted ending fund balance for 2010-11, 3 or 4 areas I would like to highlight. The first is the unrestricted resource 0000, and we used that particular resource kind of as our balancing point. So when you get your report in September, it shouldn't be a surprise that we nailed that to the penny. And what we really did was use the other funds, the pluses and the minuses for the ending fund balance, and kind of used our 000 resource as, again, the balancing point. So in addition to that, our flexibility resource, resource 19, we actually came in about $325,000 over what we had budgeted with the June report at budget adoption. And in the adult education, resource 200 came in about $230,000 over budget. Now there's other resources out there in unrestricted, and there's going to be some pluses and minuses as we go through it. But wanted to point out those couple in particular. So that's the good news, is that we will see increased balances in a couple of those flexible accounts as we look at our 10-11 closing. Of course, that's very important because that becomes the starting point for our 11-12 budget. So that's the good news. The flip side of that is already in 11-12, we've been able to, but we have identified some expenditures that weren't part of the budget going in. And the one that is probably the biggest impact on the expenditure side is in special education. And for 11-12, we already identified about $400,000 worth of increase in special education expenditures. About $230,000 of that comes as part of the chargeback from the County Office of Education. And the reason for the increase in the chargeback is not necessarily expanded scope of services, but really has a lot to do with the ARA funds. So for the last 2 years, the County Office of Education has been using ARA funds, just as we have here at the district and other districts have been doing, to supplement some of their special education expenditures. With that going away now, that has caused not just additional expense for us in our regular special education funds, but it's hit the county office as well, and those increased costs are being passed on to us. We're also seeing additional expenditures for 11-12 in the personnel area. We're bringing people on to fill holes in the leg. that weren't in the budget for 11-12. So almost as quickly as we say we were looking good with that additional 550,000 I cite, I think that we will find, more than easily find ways to have put those monies to use, and we'll just see how that continues on down the road for 11-12. So that's really the recap right there. Is we've had a slight increase in some of the couple areas. We're already seeing offsetting expenses to that, and the full report will come to you in September.
Yeah, as we all heave a sigh and don't look very happy. Okay, board members have any questions of Paul? Doesn't?
Not till September.
Not till September. Okay, any question by members of the audience? Okay. We should have put him like first or something.
He might have gone longer then,
you know.
If we would have been depressed through the whole meeting, instead of going home depressed.
Okay, so there's no additional closed session. I will adjourn the meeting.